Hi, James Farr here. The previously recorded episodes that you're about to see are a series of critical and uncomfortable conversations that I've had with law enforcement long before the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and right here in Pasadena, Anthony McClain most recently. There was J.R. Thomas and Kendrick McDade. I invite you to take a look at this series of conversations and comment below.
Take our next question from back here, and then I'll recognize you.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Good evening, Chief. My name is Amory Thomas. I had a question for you. First, I appreciate your explanation that you delivered unconscious bias training to a proportion of your officer corps. I think it's really important, but especially when we consider American policing or global policing, when we talk about when things go wrong with police and police forces and institutions, we talk about culture. So if we look at the root cause of when a department or a large organization starts wrong, it's culture. Culture is everything, and what I haven't heard tonight specifically, other than the mention of unconscious bias training, is what the department will do about changing its culture, which changes its norms, which changes its practices, which changes its behaviors on the street, dealing with people day by day. Now, this is a very complex process. I understand you have a lot of stakeholders to deal with, but what is the timeline for engaging change management? What methods of change management will you use, and how will you affect outcomes in engaging with all these myriad stakeholder groups to stop people from dying?
So I appreciate that. Is a very, very critical and important question. Constantly for the past year, if you could hang out with me, you'd see all the documents and literature that I'm reading, reviews, and the city manager knows me. Any consent decree, any kind of report or investigation from here to New York to Albuquerque to San Francisco, it could be this thick, and I'm reading it through and I'm picking things out of it to see what I can fit in my organization. It is very important that the culture of the organization is one of the most important things. Culture is about our habits, our everyday habits that we build. And I start the week on Sunday evening by issuing out a Sunday email to all 400 people in the organization about what we're doing, where we're going, about the vocabulary that we're using, about the things we're trying to achieve. I attach video, I attach reading materials, and I make sure this is being shared with everybody in the department. We then turn over into our leadership meeting, our 23 people in management. And it's important for them that they hear me and talk about accountability, about what we're going to do, how we're going to change. A big part of what we're doing is becoming a learning organization. We're about to take off this year, and we're going to have probably close to 20 retirements. I'll probably have to hire about 20, 25 officers this year on top of the 2 vacancies that we have. I got to stay on pace of that. The culture will change dramatically when I lose these 20 officers who are retiring. The majority of them are Latinos and African Americans that are leaving. And so I grew up with all of them, and they're leaving, they're retiring without me. And so it's very difficult because I have to bring new officers in from different departments or different places, different communities. They have to learn who we are and what we're about and what our history is. I keep memorandums in my office from the 1970s and 80s, and I read those. Many of our answers are in there, and many of the things that we've done. The same human problems are happening. And so our culture is based on our willingness to learn those mistakes from the past and do something different in the future. So every week, that's an important part of what we're doing. So what are we doing specifically? We bring in training in from the outside, not just police training. We brought in people to bring in our civilian workforce and our police officers together for training. It is more than just having police training. We need people from the community to come in and tell us about what we don't know about our own community. The learning environment is going to be everything. As we promote, I have to promote a deputy chief, 2 or 3 commanders. I have to do about 5 lieutenants, 10 sergeants, and about 14 corporals, and then the 20-something that have to be hired behind that. Each one of those promotional processes has to have a system. The community will be involved in those promotions. They will sit on the oral boards on those. And that's an important part of the culture to change it. That's not all police-centric. We're going to bring people in. So we're looking at things differently to change the culture. And that culture is to understand that we serve our community.
How do you choose the people? Like, you have your special groups? Are you choosing people in the community? Or can the community choose the people?
There will be, different people will be on the oral boards.
Okay.
So, I don't know what to explain. It's what?
I said blase, blase.
Not blase. Come on, Jasmine. Keep picking on me. Yes, ma'am.
My question is,
Can you go a little bit louder for me?
my question is, when you hire police officers that don't come straight from the academy, how far back do you go on their background checks to see if they went from police department to police department, or if they did something really bad and went to another police department?
Yeah, we know everything. We review. The noise gone? Oh, those are my kids later.
Real straight up.
There we go. We good? Are we all good here? So we go all the way back to their childhood, to our childhood. We go back to their school, their families, we visit the neighbors, we do everything, anything in that background. And you know, if you've had drugs and everything, it doesn't mean they're not going to get hired. You know, we look at people that have financial issues. It doesn't mean you're not going to get hired as a police officer. We just don't want creditors knocking at our police door. And so it doesn't mean you can't be a police officer. So many times, many of you have given me phone numbers of young people that want to be police officers, and I spend time with them. They come into the police department, and sometimes they're in shock that the chief called them and says, come on in and we'll have you talk to people, and they can't believe they had that opportunity. If you have people, let us talk to them. But we go all the way back to make sure we're not getting somebody that's had problems in other agencies. We don't do that. And it's very important for us to do the proper investigation. It is a very thick packet that takes 3 to 4 months to get to. And with the academy and training, if I hired 5 people today, they're not usable for me for almost a year and a half. And I think a lot of people don't know that part of it. It's very difficult. We just don't hire and you go onto the street. From the time you apply, it's probably close to a year and a half before you're actually usable for us out there doing police work.
Can I-
Yes, please.
Okay, because of the association, and if a police officer got in trouble, let's say in another police department, do they close those records, like, so that you can't really see all their records?
No, we have access to all those records. Now, if a police officer from another department says, we don't want the police department, I don't want passing and looking at my other packet, we say thank you very much for applying. Good luck to you. Open your packet to us or you don't come to us. We need absolutely the best people. Now, I'll share this for a moment. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've lost almost 20% of our workforce. They went to some great agencies around the area. When I talk to those chiefs, why our people? You have what we want. So we are training up the best of the best and getting the best, only to lose them to another place. So I don't want to become the Cleveland Browns and keep losing the best players to the best teams. We are the best place. We are that place. And so it's important for us to keep them here. They feel safe, they feel important, but at the same time, they're getting done what we're asking them to get done.
So I'm going to take your question and then I'm going to leave it. Yes.
Hi, Mark Abrams. I live around here, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Just wondering, what are some of the other communities? Are there other communities around the nation or in the state that you look at as similar kind of demographically or whatever that you're in dialogue with, or just
Yep.
out of curiosity?
Constantly, I'm in contact with many other chiefs. The city manager knows we're always sharing and talking with other cities everywhere. It's nice to see how many phone calls we're getting about our use of force process, about our community dialogues, about the chief's advisory. I've had 3 or 4 phone calls, but I try not to let the phone calls just come into me. I'm trying to reach out to other places. Smaller cities have the best practices I could look at and examine. Their tempo is slower. They put things into place that if I could take it and just try to grow it in Pasadena, it would really work well. And the problem with that is no one place has one singular practice that works perfectly. You have to take pieces of it and build your own. And over the years, that's what we try to do. They have many good models. I like to, they work differently because of the fact that they have a police commission or a council that sets the policy for the police. It's a whole different place there. But the thing is, I do like some of their footbeat models and some of the other things that we try to bring on. So it's a constant struggle to read something and think if I could do it. I've read stuff 15, 20 years ago that just today I'm putting into place or trying to put into place. So I have been holding on to initiatives and ideas for more than 20 years, hoping for the right time and the right place to put it into play. So it's like having that special play for 4th and 10 and you want to throw it and it'll work. I think we're doing that. It's community-based, a lot of these things. So we do that.
Yeah.
It's difficult. There's great stuff out there for us to look at as well.
Okay, hi, my name is Deborah, and I've been in Pasadena, Altadena, South Pasadena since 1974. And basically, I want to know, do you have mental evaluations for the police officers, especially after going through a traumatic incident? And also, I would have a suggestion that you take your officers that are not of the same ethnic group as they're policing and maybe have them live with and be immersed in the culture so they won't be threatened every time they see an African-American male. Because we don't have to carry a weapon. All we have heard is they seem threatened, because we have an afro or because we're dark-skinned. And those are people who have not lived around the culture. Just like they say churches are the most segregated day. Maybe they need to go to a church. Maybe they need to go down and live with an African-American family or whatever family that they're going to be policing and see what the culture's like.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where I've seen just recently where a person of a different race had a machete, naked, going to attack African-Americans. And guess when they came on scene, they went to the ones that they were attacking, assuming they're the ones that was causing the violence, and sat them down and said, oh, they have a mental issue and they need help. They don't do that with us. They shoot first and then say, oh, he was retarded, or oh, he was this, after they're dead. But they sat him down, this and that and the other, got him counseling. So I think we need diversity, and every morning, like you pray with your kids, you need to sit them down and watch some movies that they need to relate to. Maybe they need to see Black Klansman and all this other movies. So
Honestly states that if the person's over 6
no,
feet
see,
tall,
but see, they're violating our rights. They're violating our rights. And I go out the house right now. I just moved into a 99.9% community where I'm like the only one. And they had a paddy wagon 2 days later when I moved in. You know, so all I'm saying is even as a senior citizen, I'm threatening in a community that I'm not there, and they will frisk me quick. And I went in the store in that area with a person of another persuasion, and they approached me. So these gray hairs I thought was going to give me some immunity, but it didn't. So this has been happening to me. I've been pulled out of car, this and that and the other. I can't go into that. I wrote a lot of my questions that I was hoping that would be addressed. So if I can direct them to you and hopefully get a direct answer to these about training, maybe the ghetto or hood exchange program, you know, all that. So I know I've been waiting, and I sent my questions in weeks ago, but that's what I really, really, really want. I'm sorry, this is Deborah. I'm still smiling, and my tongue is bleeding because I've been holding it a lot.
No, those are important. So I appreciate those. And so, yeah, there's more we could do when it comes to cultural awareness for all of us. All of us. Every one of us on all directions. So I don't take that away from you. And I apologize for anything that's happened to you. And I think that policing is difficult, and many times I think we have to apologize for some of the things that have happened in our profession. So I can't go back in time to talk to you about those things. I can if you would wish, but...
Will you answer my letters that I've sent?
I haven't...
would have it forwarded to you.
Please do. I would.
I did send a ton of questions.
Okay.
I'd be talking all night if I wanted.
No, I'm good. I haveneen seen the questions. So on the other side of it, we do have mental evaluation. We do have mental evaluations for we do have mental evaluations for officer at hire after critical events as well, and we do have a peer support group internally, and we have a citywide employee assistance program, and all that does occur, and people do use those in our lives. All of us have been traumatized by different events, police officers as well, but we're asking them to do a more difficult job, and so trauma has occurred on both sides. And when you're a police officer doing that type of work, we do have to make sure they reach out for help, they have the assistance they need, and we could address it when needed. Very important.
The last meeting, I was kind of upset because they said having those mental evaluations monthly or yearly was a violation of their rights. But where our rights are being violated by them using excessive force. And so I'm saying, who are we really looking out for? Because believe you me, I want you to go home to your family, just like I have to give that conversation to my youngest and only son every day.
Yeah, I don't know of any profession that we could require anybody in this country to have a monthly or yearly evaluation.
Not a yearly at least.
Yeah, I don't know of any profession that does that.
Well, your profession has a gun.
I get it, and we do
make sure they don't have post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely, and we do that for critical events. They do have that evaluation. It is done.
So that's my suggestion. You need to.
Right.
So what?
I don't know if I'll ever get there. I don't know if I could, start writing a state law that could start requiring that. I don't know. It's difficult, but
can you have the hood exchange program where they live in the community?
Yeah, it would be great to have that for all of us. I think.
That's your budget.
No, it's a budget. I think it is a budget.
Exactly. I would do that too. I was sent to Friendly Town.
Yeah.
And with an all-white family a month out of the year.
Yeah, we're very diverse in our organization, and there's people come from everywhere in different neighborhoods, and it really is tough to kind of share those experiences with one another. And we try to do that in the police department. One of the things we do is we have a new employee dinner, and it's attended by a lot of our new employees. That's one of the best places to begin that. We bring community pastors in, we bring different people in to talk to the police officers and the employees who work the jail in different places to try to start that up. We want them to keep close to them how they feel when they're hired. At times we forget about that 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. I think we could all relate that to the jobs you might do. You might not feel the same today as you did when you were first hired. We try to keep that going with social events and outreach in different ways to do that. So it's important for us to have that type of positive morale. So thank you for that. I wish I could get there as fast as you would want me to, ma'am, but I don't.
So I'm going to caution us. We've got about 15 minutes left. I see 2 more hands, but I definitely do want to have everybody that has questions to ask that question. I see your hand too. So, ma'am.
I just want to elaborate just a little more on the mental health piece specifically for the officers. We understand that the police department is made up of people, good people, bad people. Even with the good people, they experience vicarious trauma, even if they don't realize it. The fact is, we don't call them over for dinner. You know, we call them when there's a problem. You're going to problem after problem after problem. And I have a friend who's a retired officer, and she was telling us at a party, she recommended that we are nice, you know, when we interact with police, because you never know what situation they're coming from, you know. And my husband told her, well, you know, it's life or death, so you better calm down before you walk into the next situation. But the fact is, you know, they are coming into high-stress situations. And so, not necessarily, I don't think we should mandate them to be assessed, but offer mental health counseling, even just the process. Sometimes they could be experiencing trauma and they don't even realize it. They can be upset and they don't know why.
Absolutely true.
So it's just to give them an opportunity to debrief and to go back out into the community from a fresh start.
And I think it's important to try to get there. Our 30-day reviews of use of force, it's a debrief, but I think we had a chance to really evaluate if there's any other serious issues going on, number one. Number two, the peer support team has been really good for employees to reach out to one another with a specialized group to say, I'm having a problem. And we've seen that before. And so it's very important to have that. But you hit something that's on the head that's very important for me. Officers do respond to a number of calls, and some cities have a higher tempo than other cities. Ours is a little bit higher. And so officers do respond to a high intense situation, and then 5 minutes later, they're off to another call. We don't have the ability to say, hey, you know, you have a 20-minute break, you know, to go do that. It's hard to get there. So I'd really like to find a way to try to address that. But in policing, you know, even when I was, you know, a police officer, you know, you'd go from one high-end type of situation, you may have even pulled your gun for some reason. And now you're literally going to another call where it's a family dealing with a family issue. And you're way up here, and they're not where you're at. And that becomes really difficult for us to learn how to turn it on and turn it off, turn it on and turn it off. And even at the end of the day when we go home, turn it on, turn it off. It's difficult, and we have to find a way to handle that trauma on police officers day in and day out, because cities that have the higher tempo, it's hard to control that. So I completely agree with you, and we're looking at wellness training. The problem with the wellness training, I wanted to bring it in for the police officers, and they told me for 20 officers it would cost like $60,000 or $70,000. I'll wait a little bit longer. So I'm trying to find something that's affordable and something that the officers are willing to participate in for wellness. It's an important part to be able to de-stress.
So I recognize your hand here, sir. The young lady over here, and Jeff, I see.
I just wanted to see if one of the kids wanted to talk.
They do, so it should be that.
Cool.
Thank you for making that. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment to your last statement there about being able to turn it on and turn it off. I think that's something when somebody first becomes a police officer, that's a given for the job. And if one does not have the ability to do that, then maybe they need to find a way that they can. Because, yeah, you're going to be in a high-stress situation probably on a daily basis.
Right.
But that's not my question. My question has to do with something that Robert Grant said earlier. And that was that, you know, we come to these meetings and we see the suits, but we don't see the badges. And so my question is, what practices are being done to alleviate, to create this culture of trust that needs to be between the police officers in the community and the people in the community, and to try to alleviate some of the distrust, so it's not always this us versus them, right, on both sides of the equation. So what things are being done?
So 2 parts. One is the conversations like this. This is the start to have this exchange.
And yeah, that's you. I'm talking about the patrol officers, the ones that are driving around the community.
Sir, this is the first.
I've come here. I've seen detectives.
Right.
I've seen you at another meeting. I'm talking about the officers that are driving up and down the streets here.
They've been here. They've been right up here.
There's a few that
They've been here. So
white boys that be controlling through here. Thank you.
okay.
Well,
As we go along this.
So, sir, to answer your question honestly,
Not you, none of y'all. Come on.
2 parts and they connect to one another. One is we need to do more.
Come on, stem in here.
Jasmine, please.
That's the whole
Jasmine.
part. And I've been knowing him since I was 12. I'm 32. He been chasing me, Perez. So y'all don't know the trauma that we've been dealing with. I'm listening. Go ahead. We've been listening to you talk for hours.
I know. I'm trying not to be so long-winded.
That's what's wrong with this shit. This shit is all fake and fraud. You want to keep listening to him instead of him listening to us. That's what's wrong. Ain't no community police if you ain't listening.
I want to hear us. I
don't give a fuck.
You
How about that?
Okay, got it.
I don't care. Because I'm speaking for a whole community.
Go ahead.
A whole community. Nah. They just don't want to hear because they don't feel comfortable. I'm speaking for a whole community. I don't know where you came from or you, but I'm speaking for a whole lot of people out there. And I ain't going to keep shutting up. That's for damn sure. Because Harry Tubman watching me, Malcolm X watching me, and all my ancestors. Y'all better be careful. Because they're watching you too.
Thank you so much.
That part. No, don't keep listening. Go ahead, sister. Because you're cool.
Sir, if I could respond to what you said earlier in the evening, I think you were here.
Wow.
The chief talked about it's not enough just to see the chief, right? everyone wants to see the chief, but who you really got to talk to are the officers that you're likely to interact if you interact with an officer. And the chief and I could not agree more with that. And he's made a commitment to bring his people here. He's done that. He wants to do more of that. But I would challenge all of you a little bit to be welcoming when they come. Because we don't mind having the discussion and the dialogue, but you can imagine an officer walking in and feeling immediately being responsible to answer for everything police have ever done across the nation or locally. And they're people too. And in order to have a real dialogue, we have to have empathy. We have to be able to put ourselves in the other person's shoes and talk and then realize that's a person too, and they have a valid viewpoint, and let me try to understand it. I think what's unique about my job is I see the police department here, and I see the community here, and I can see everyone's, where they're coming from, and their feelings, and they're all legitimate. What we have to do is bring it together so we can have that dialogue. But as normal people, no one wants to walk into a meeting and get sort of jumped by 20 people, right? We have to be able to have honest conversations without distress.
Let me jump in there. Please, let me jump in there. With all due respect, Mr. Vermeil, you're having...
Call me Steve.
Steve, you're having a white moment right now.
So I don't...
No, hear me out. Hear me out.
James, I'm not going to accept that.
No.
James, I'm not going to accept that. You don't know anything about me.
What I'm saying is... Jed,
okay.
let me address...
I'll be interested in hearing about me later.
Let me address what I mean by that.
No, I think that's kind of a cop-out.
No, it's not. It's an assessment. What we're saying is, those officers, and John and I have talked about this, the difficulty of bringing young officers into this space and them feeling comfortable with being here. And so when you understand the angst that people in the community have, it's going to show up this way. And so, to Jasmine's point, if their feelings are going to be hurt, they don't need to be police officers.
I'm not saying that.
So that's what I'm saying. But you're asking us to just say, welcome, come on, let's hug and come in. No, that's not what we're doing.
What I'm saying is, they need to hear it. And I want them to hear it. But you also have to put yourself in their shoes.
I can't. There's no possible way I can.
So you're saying it's a one-way street.
No, what I'm saying is I'm not an officer, so I can't put myself in their shoes. It's just not possible.
And I don't really care for your white
We have two questions on the floor. Two questions on the floor, and I repeated that we have 15 minutes. We want to respect the space and we want to respect the time. So the conversation has taken a little bit of a turn, and I understand people's passion, but we're going to have these two last questions, and we're going to wrap up.
So I'm interested to know about how data from the police department. I was very disturbed last year to know that 90% of arrests were arrests were people of color in Pasadena. So I'm interested to know, like, how can data be better utilized to address, racial issues, methods, practices, and to evaluate them.
Right.
And how can we have better service codes or service codes that can help us do that? For example, I work with youth in the community, and we have proliferation of marijuana in our community, but our service codes don't allow us to know how specifically youth are being impacted or who that's being enforced on. So how can we use our data?
That's fantastic, and it connects on what we didn't answer for you, sir. Action is the way this has to lead to for the conversation. So to that point, there's so much data that we have, it's hard to figure out, how to put it together to be usable for all of us. When we use it to point and say, look what's wrong with you, it's never going to get us anywhere. There are so many ways, I think, to bring the community in and to look at data and to examine it, to say, what are we talking about marijuana use? Where's the problems with marijuana use? There's good parts of marijuana that we know from a medical standpoint is helpful for people. But we're also worried about the development of youth minds when it comes to marijuana, or where it's being sold, or the THC levels. But there's so much to it, and the data that we have that's not quite accurate with the 90% mark, but I understand that. We have to find a way to discuss data and not let data tell us and create a line between us. We have to understand data. This RIPA thing that's up there, I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. And you might say, well, of course you're not, you're the police. I'd rather sit down with the community and say, how do we talk about the data? How do we talk about what crime is really happening? About what's the percentage of crime being reported? Who are we stopping? Why are we stopping over here and maybe not over there? There's so many discussion points to help officers understand all this. But when we take all that data and just say, look what you did, we're not going to get anywhere. And history has proven that. So what we do forward is going to be up to us in this community. I think we could start creating some kind of dynamics to sit down and talk about what you just said. There's so many things about data that we're concerned about. It's the start point. It is not the end point to anything. And we have to have that open discussion. I would love to sit down and share data and be in a room and have honest conversation about it, and not for it to be a fight about, look what you're doing. So we have to make sure we get there so the officers understand it as well. There's a place for us to go with data for us to understand it and not just say that's what it is. It's deeper than that. So I'd like to get to where you're at. I'm hoping here in the next couple of years we could start this conversation. I'd like to bring in educators to look at our data and say, what are we looking at? How can we figure this out? And not just say it's just data. Look at how many people you're stopping that are Latino or are African Americans. It's deeper than that. Who's calling it in? What are we talking about? What type of crime are we talking about? We don't have, for example, Asian crime in our city. So should I worry about a Latino gang officer who works with Latino families and stops mostly Latino gang members to say, that's all you stop and you're white? He's going to say, really? That's what I'm supposed to do. And so it's very difficult to get at these conversations if we don't have it. But I think your point, along with the one about culture, are probably the most important points tonight to get at, to have a change agent in our community, to get to the second part of what you said. Where is this going to go? Is this just conversation we walk out and we're done? Where are we 1 year from now to reflect back on this meeting to see what we've done? That's where I want to be. I want to progress and be somewhere different, not to rehab this meeting all over again. I got better things to do. I could retire and sit home maybe, I don't know. But I got better things to do to make a community better, to really work at something. We need to recruit the next generation of police officer. They should come from this city. They shouldn't be coming from somewhere else. We're paying good money for police officers. Sir, you said about the other, calling you sir. And so I've known you all my life. And so these are things that are important to us because we are hiring officers that are older now. They seem younger, but they're older. I was hired at 21 years old. The average officer now is probably at 28. And they still look very young. And so many of them still do live at home. And so these are things that we're dealing with and what we're trying to, help our officers understand. Many are coming into this profession from the military. Many are coming from different parts of the country. We have to make sure that we understand and we accept them for who they are and what we want to create. So to your point, I love that question, and that's something you should hold us accountable and see what we could work on. A lot of youth data, I think, is there for us to work on an initiative.
So I'm going to take one last question and then we're going to wrap up.
My question is going to go back to the practice of mental wellness. I'm an MFT student, a marriage and family therapy student, and I know that there are techniques that can be taught in 30 minutes that could change the way an officer interacts with his community. Something as simple as teaching walking meditation, where one is paying attention to their breath and the environment, and they're clearing their mind so that they can be present and be in the present moment and be aware of their emotions. So these types of practices are taught by monks. There's a monastery in San Diego that does retreats for people of color because of the trauma that we go through within society. I'm sure that something like that could be done for police officers.
I would enjoy hearing more about that because that is something we have to bring to our officers to find a way for them to find a way to relax and really control our emotions. Many of us work out or we have hobbies, hiking, running, whatever it might be, to help us kind of find that place. But it would be nice to know there's other exercises out there that would be helpful from a wellness perspective. Thank you for that.
Can I just add one little thing, but just skip me? Two things.
Yes.
I don't need it to be a downer. What can you tell your police officers not to cuss at us, and also not to expect to get free food when they go through the drive-thru?
Right.
well, first of all, the cameras have done a lot to reduce the cussing. And yeah, they're not supposed to get free. So call my office.
Right.
Call him.
Yeah, they know they don't get free food.
They do.
Rob,
Okay,
they know you're not
thank you
supposed
so
to.
much, everybody.